Good evening and welcome to a Vegas PBS election special. I'm Steve Sebelius.
And I'm Elizabeth Thompson. Tonight's debate is being held in front of a studio audience. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be asking questions of opposing sides of ballot question 2, the repeal of the state's constitutional 5% cap on the net proceeds of minerals tax.
Opening and closing statements in addition to the first question have been determined by a coin toss. Now Elizabeth will introduce the people who will debate the issue.
And they are Bob Fulkerson, State Director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, who is here to argue in favor of question 2, and longtime attorney and lobbyist James Wadhams, here to argue against repeal.
Bob Fulkerson, you have the first opening statement.
Thank you for this opportunity. Nevada voters will soon decide whether to remove mining's unique 150-year-old tax protections from the state constitution and allow the legislature to update the mining tax to reflect modern times. Passage of question 2 won't raise or lower the taxes that mining pays, but it will remove the special protections that no other industry in our state enjoys. Billions of dollars of mineral wealth has been extracted here. The majority has been exported. It's been that way since statehood, when gold and silver from our Comstock lode built San Francisco and the Pacific Stock Exchange. At least that wealth stayed in the United States. Today's transnational mining corporations ship profits to foreign countries like Canada and South Africa. Last year, Nevada's world-class gold industry raked in $8.1 billion and paid to the state general fund $74 million in mining taxes for a tax rate of less than 1%. Contrast this with our gaming industry, which paid a 6.6% tax rate, or the average Joe in Nevada, who paid about an 8% sales tax alone. Mining is critical to our state's economy, and nobody wants to chase away business or cost people their jobs. But ask yourself, can giant, highly profitable mining corporations afford to contribute more to our state? We know what the mining lobbyists say. On November 4th, you get to decide.
Thank you, Mr. Fulkerson. Mr. Wadhams, now your opening statement.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think this is an important series of discussions, if not debates. And I'm happy to be here speaking to question 2. I'm not here representing any particular constituency, except I'm a resident of Clark County and an attorney that's practiced in the state for nearly 40 years doing state taxation issues. Question 2 is a very simple proposition. It just repeals the references in the state constitution to mining. That's what it does. It does nothing more and nothing less. As my colleague mentioned, it doesn't raise, it doesn't lower a tax, but it will result in reduced revenue because the cap on taxation will be the same on the gold as it is for all other property in each and every county. And under the state constitution, that will be the limit, that will be the cap that will be then in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move into our questions.
Mr. Fulkerson, first question is to you. Now, repealing this cap won't raise or lower the taxes, you said, but it will raise the cost of doing business for the mining industry, perhaps making it less worthwhile to explore for minerals in harder to reach places. Could this not end up costing jobs, at least until the price of precious metals increases to make it worthwhile to find those minerals?
Well, actually, it does not do anything in terms of raising taxes or lowering taxes. Both Mr. Wadhams and I just stated that. We both, the proponents and the opponents, agree on that. So it will not cost the mining industry an extra dime on this. So no, it will not cost jobs. All it will do is simply give the legislature one more lever to pull when they're looking at how to shore up our state's very dysfunctional tax system. You know, right now their hands are tied. They can't go to mining and ask to increase the net proceeds on minerals or ask to increase, their share to our state's budget.
Over to you, Mr. Wadhams. Could this result in higher costs and less exploration?
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. Fulkerson and I do not agree. What this will do is reduce the taxes paid, but if the impetus is then we can go raise taxes, that raises costs. Taxes are costs. When I pay my federal income tax, that reduces my paycheck. And so I think your viewers are well aware that costs are definitely an impact. And in businesses, they are in the position they have to make a profit in order to survive. And in order to survive, they've got to balance the cost with the revenue they can gain. So the cost of extracting a mineral, you add to that a cost of taxation, an increased taxation, there will be jobs that will disappear, no question.
Mr. Fulkerson, your rebuttal, Mr. Wadhams suggests that if taxes are increased, those are costs, and that would result in job losses, perhaps.
Well, the first step to even the legislature considering raising taxes, even being able to have the discussion, first we have to pass Question 2. Question 2 itself simply removes mining's special sweetheart loopholes from constitutional protection. It's not going to say there's nothing that follows, then mining taxes increase. All it does is take them out of the Constitution. If the legislature then wants to work with the industry so that the industry can then step up and pay its share,
that's time
that's
for
a different story.
For that answer. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, next question. Mr. Wadhams, one argument against taxation on the mining industry is that it's unwise tax policy to impose special taxes on individual industries, but the mining industry itself is already defending a special tax exemption. Isn't that somewhat hypocritical?
Well, that's an excellent question, but it combines 2 or 3 different things. And if I can try to answer those as briefly as I can. In 1989, the people of Nevada voted to increase the rate of taxation on gold, period. It was the county rate, and then it was raised to a maximum of 5%. And that's the language that you see disappear. So the people's will of raising the tax on mining would be repealed by this. As we've seen in the last 13, 15 months now, the price of gold is a commodity. It's an international commodity, and a suggestion that we're going to balance our budget on a commodity is irresponsible. So I think there is a serious misinterpretation of what's going on. The other fact is that mining can be taxed, since it was taxed in 1991 with the employee head tax. In 2003, it was taxed with the payroll tax. We now call it the modified business tax. So there is no exemption from taxation.
That's your time on that question.
Thank you.
Mr. Fulkerson, your response?
Sure. Well, let's go back to that 1989 provision that the mining industry had voters pass. And the big thing that did said that no other tax may be imposed upon a mineral. And that's the big deal here. So that's why if we wanted to impose a severance tax, which is how a lot of other states and countries tax mining, we can't do that. You know, the other thing is that mining really wanted that over the competing proposal, which was a $16.50 per ounce tax that Assemblyman Marvin Sedway was trying to get through the legislature at the time. So this was a much better deal for mining at the time.
Mr. Wadhams, you have an opportunity to respond to that response.
Yeah, I think the confusion that comes out of this discussion is was in my colleague's opening statement. You can't compare a gross revenue tax on gaming to a property tax. In fact, if you compare MGM Mirage, whose buildings in our state, in our county, are worth $8 billion, they pay a 1% tax on their property. So the gold miners who have $8 billion in value are paying 1%. That's same. Do they pay sales tax? Sure. Does everybody pay sales tax? Sure. The distinction of gaming paying a gaming tax is because that was a business that was illegal until we legalized it.
And that's your time. All right, next question is for Mr. Fulkerson. Mining companies pay all the common taxes that other businesses in Nevada pay, to include payroll taxes, sales tax, property tax, as well as business license fees and so on. And they pay the 5% net tax on the proceeds of minerals on top of that. Why should the mining industry pay any taxes that other businesses aren't required to pay?
Well, because mining is different. Because unlike any other industry that's out there, mining is different. Once you take that gold from the ground, you lose your ability to impose a tax upon it to promote the public good. You know, you can always pull another slot machine handle, you can always fry another hamburger, you can always sell another car. Those taxes are continuously being generated. With mineral extraction, it's a completely different ballgame. That's why it's called a severance tax. You sever that from the ground. And that's why it's different, and that's why they should have to pay that severance tax.
Mr. Wadhams?
Thank you. I think that's very important because, first of all, our current form of taxation is a severance tax. It is a tax imposed when that mineral is taken out of the ground. So we have to understand that we do have a severance tax. Secondly, mining can be taxed any other way. The point that my opponent makes about the so-called non-renewable resource is true about anything that is sold outside of the state. If I sell my car to my buddy in California, it leaves, it will never be taxed here again. That becomes a non-renewable resource. If I dig a swimming pool in my backyard and sell that dirt to a road builder in Arizona, that hole will stay there forever. That's a non-renewable resource. The question is, whose property is it? It is not the state's property. It is the owner of the land's property. Most of our mining takes place on private property. None takes place on state land.
Well, 40% about takes place on public land, and that belongs to you and to me, the people of this country. And they deserve a little bit more than what Barrick and Newmont, which represent 90% of the mining in our state, 90% of the mining in Nevada is gold mining, they deserve a little bit more than what these transnational gold mining corporations are taking out.
All right, next question is to you, Mr. Wadhams. It's been suggested by a study conducted by your opponent's organization that there are mines that produce minerals that because of the deductions involved actually pay zero taxes. Is that fair?
No, I don't think that study was fair at all. In fact, I think it cobbled together disparate issues. For example, comparing a sales tax to a property tax. All of your viewers pay a property tax either as renters in the houses they're in or apartments they're in, or in the houses they own. They own a property tax. Your viewers clearly know the difference between a property tax and a sales tax. You pay the sales tax at the cash register. So that kind of comparison really wasn't a valid study in the first place. The second comparison is the one that I wanted to make a moment ago, and that is property owners in our county, and I use the MGM not in a negative way because they're a very valuable employer. They've got $8 billion worth of property and they pay a 1% tax because they get a 65% reduction of that value and pay the rate on that. So it's effectively a 1% tax. So you need to compare not even apples to oranges, you need to compare fruit to fruit, not fruit to building equipment.
Mr. Fulkerson?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the bottom line of that study was that 111 times over 10 years, gold mines claimed that gold production at one mine or another had no taxable value, so that you had $4.3 billion come out of these mines where they paid not one penny in the mining tax. Not one penny out of those mines. But, and two of like just this is last year, Barrick's Bald Mountain Mine and Varus Gold, both Canadian-owned operations, they both, mined a lot of gold. In fact, Bald Mountain brought out $135 million. But because of the write-offs, they wrote off $160 million, so they said they were operating at a loss. And that's what these accountants and lobbyists have been able to do in Carson City and before the Tax Commission, is write in these series of sweetheart loopholes into the tax code so that they could take these tax deductions, and passing question 2 will prevent that.
That's time on that. Mr. Wadhams, how about that? $4.3 billion and no taxes?
Let's talk about that. This is a very simple thing that I think every viewer is going to understand. If you happen to be fortunate enough to live in a house and in your backyard is a nugget of gold, a 1 ounce of gold, which is probably worth $1,200, and you can go out and pick it up at no cost, that's worth $1,200. If it's 50 feet down and you've got to hire a backhoe to go get it, how much is it worth to you now? Something less than $1,200. So this notion that there are wild deductions that are given are the cost to get that out. To the miner who owns that land, to get that ounce of gold out is costing him something in the range of $1,000. A little more, a little less, depending on the quality of that mine. And so the value of that property in the hands of the holder is the difference between what I can sell it for and what it costs me to get it.
Okay. I'll check my backyard for money tonight. Mr. Fulkerson, this next question is to you. Mining salaries, they're about $88,000 a year on average. They're more than twice the average wage for Nevada jobs. Knowing that high-paying jobs are part of the state's economic development goals, isn't it counterproductive to raise taxes on the industry, which would be allowed if this were to pass, knowing that pay cuts or job reductions could occur if that happens?
You know, no matter what industry is being targeted, whether or not you are the largest industries in the state that currently don't pay a corporate profits tax like they do in 47 other states, or whether you're Barrick and Newmont. And by the way, it's not some little miner with his pick and shovel and a mule out there. These are the largest transnational mining corporations in the world operating in Nevada. And doing that exploration is a cost of doing business. Why should I have to pay for that? But back to the jobs issue, no matter what, they always bring that back, that it's going to cost jobs. And you know, that has not bared out. What happens, though, is that money comes into the state. The state then can hire teachers. We can hire firemen. We can hire police. We can do a better job building public infrastructure. That, in turn, creates jobs, and our whole state prospers, not just Barrick or Newmont and their shareholders in Canada.
Okay, Mr. Wadhams, what's your response to that?
Thank you. I think that's a great issue, because those jobs, as you noted in your question, are the highest paying jobs in the state, without question, over $80,000 a year on average. And to suggest that those jobs are not valuable is silly. We just went through a special legislative session September 10th and 11th to bring more jobs into northern Nevada. Why was northern Nevada important to your viewers here in Clark County? Because if we don't keep the health, the financial health of those northern and rural counties, Clark County will have to export more tax. Clark County will have to export more tax to make up that difference. So there was a great hue and cry. Every legislator, plus the governor, of course, supported the passage of that project, which, by the way, is an extension of mining. What they're going to build are batteries, and the parts of those batteries, the elements that go into those batteries are nickel and lithium, some of which is going to be mined here, but it matters not. It is the end product of a mining operation, and we ballyhooed that because that was $40,000 a year jobs.
That's time for that answer. Mr. Fulkerson, a rebuttal to that?
Well, you know, Barrick's Nevada production isn't just the biggest of any country. Their production is bigger than any other continent in the world. You know, 40% of their revenue came from Nevada in 2012. Passage of question 2 is not going to cost any jobs or force them to leave. The gold is here. That's not going to change anytime soon. I mean, they tell shareholders Nevada is the cornerstone of our success. And if you look at some of these tax rates in other countries, where not only they're paying severance taxes, they're paying corporate taxes, they're paying royalties, you know, upwards of 30% total. So, you know, 0.6% versus 30%, I think they're getting a pretty good deal here.
All right, and our final question is for Mr. Wadhams. During the 2013 legislature, some Senate Republicans unveiled a plan to double the net proceeds on minerals tax from 5 to 10% and to earmark those proceeds for education. Knowing that at least some revenue from a higher mining tax would help fund and presumably improve Nevada schools, isn't it only right that the mining industry, which has gained so much from this state, should give back?
Well, there's a couple of points, Elizabeth, I think that need to be addressed. First of all, the mining industry, and I'm not speaking for them, I'm just going to report what I saw as a participant in this process. They have consistently supported sufficient revenue to support government, education, mental health, everything we need. But they believe, and have said so publicly, it should be broad-based. Industry-specific taxation creates a problem. It creates a volatility. We just have seen in the last 36 hours, 72 hours, the value of what's called the Equal Protection Clause under a United States Constitution that gives the opportunity for marriage to people irrespective of their orientation or gender. Equal protection is the issue here. Why would we single out one industry that is otherwise legal and violate the Equal Protection Law? It makes no sense. So the simple answer is mining has never skirted its responsibility to participate in additional taxation. And the imposition of a $600 million tax on 2 companies is shocking.
That's your time. Mr. Fulkerson, your response.
Well, the mining industry had one lobbyist per legislator in the last, for one lobbyist for every 2 legislators in the last session, precisely to keep them from having to pay their fair share. And if you really want a broad-based tax, come on board, support question 3. You know, that's a broad-based tax. Let's have your support on that. Otherwise, this idea that we'll support it is just Lucy's football again. It's lip service, and the people of Nevada are tired of it.
Mr. Wadhams, you'll get the last word on this question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would be happy to support a broad-based tax if it were reasonably well crafted. The problem, and I'm not going to get into debate on question 3, but it imposes taxes on top of taxes. It has constitutional infirmities. We need a system that business can support. I think there will be broad-based support for business, from business for taxation, and I suspect that mining will participate in that.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions. Now the closing statement, once again, Bob Fulkerson, you're first.
Thank you. Making mining pay what they pay in other states or countries would not cause them to suffer or to abandon operations here. According to the Fraser Institute, Nevada is one of the most stable, mineral-rich, least taxed places to mine on the planet. More than 1/4 of Newmont's and more than 1/3 of Barrick's reserves are located in Nevada. If they move because we pass question 2, they'll have to take the world-renowned Carlin Gold Trend with them. We've heard today that Nevada's mining industry pays other taxes, property taxes, use taxes, and such. Every industry and every resident can say the same thing. But that point does little to explain and nothing to justify mining's coddled status in our Constitution. Mining has argued over the years that it isn't right to single them out, but mining is special because it profits from extracting a non-renewable resource. Singling out mining for industry-specific taxation is not only fair, it's responsible. There's a lot of people in our great state, especially working stiffs, who can legitimately complain that our state's regressive tax system is taking them for a ride. Can the largest, most profitable gold mining corporations in the world make that claim? Only if we let them. Vote yes on question 2, and then we can begin to make mining pay its fair share.
Thank you, Mr. Wadhams. I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Fulkerson. Now to you, Mr. Wadhams.
Thank you. I'm going to try to be brief. First of all, I think the indictment of multinational corporations is really an insult to our friends on the Strip who have exported gaming now around the world and are multinational corporations. And I just hope they don't invert themselves but to avoid federal taxation. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The issue about mining has nothing to do with Barrick and Newmont. It has to do with property owners and the value of what they are entitled to. Mining is an economic activity. I have heard it said by my opponent in other circumstances, they can't leave here because the gold's here. The extraction of gold is an economic activity. If it costs more to get it out than I can sell it for, I won't get it out. It will stay here. And that is the goal that my opponent has in mind. They do not want mining to take place in this state. And passage of question 2 does more than that. It imperils the treasury of Clark County, because if mining disappears from northern Nevada and those rural counties, Clark County will be, and the taxpayers here will have to export more dollars to cover that shortfall.
All right, thank you. And that concludes the debate for ballot question 2. We'd like to thank Bob Fulkerson and James Wadhams for participating, and we'd like to thank you for watching. Please join us tomorrow night for a debate on ballot question 3, the education initiative, followed by the debate for Attorney General. We'll see you then.